Welcome to Agri-Food Economics Explained.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving deep into some really fundamental economic concepts. This is aimed squarely at you, our undergraduate students in food engineering, biosystems engineering, and agronomic engineering.
Yeah, think of this as like extra study material.
Yeah.
We want to break down the basic theory of economics and show how it actually applies, practically in the agri-food world.
Exactly. And our focus for this deep dive, market, supply, and demand. These are the absolute bedrock ideas you need for understanding how the whole agri-food system ticks.
Couldn't agree more. And it all starts with, well, the basic economic problem, doesn't it? Scarcity.
Scarcity, right? Limited resources, but, well, seemingly endless wants and needs.
Precisely. And because of that scarcity, individuals, companies, farms has to make choices. They're trying to make themselves as well off as possible with what they've got.
So that's what economists mean by constrained optimization. You're doing the best you can within certain limits, like your budget or the tech you have available.
That's it exactly. Whether it's a farmer picking seeds or a food company designing packaging, they're optimizing under constraints.
And every choice means giving something else up. That trade-off idea.
Which leads us straight to opportunity cost. It's maybe one of the most important concepts. What you give up isn't just the money spent. It's the value of the next best thing you could have done instead.
That's huge. So for, say, an engineer choosing equipment for a processing line, the cost isn't just the price, it's also the potential benefits, maybe speed or flexibility they missed out on by not picking a different machine.
You got it. It frames how we should think about decisions. Okay, so with that foundation, let's tackle our first big topic, the market.
What exactly is a market in economic terms?
Well, fundamentally, it's just a group of buyers and sellers of a particular thing, a good or a service. They come together, virtually or physically, to make deals, to transact.
And these can look really different, right? Like you've got super organized commodity markets with auctioneers, maybe.
Yeah, or think much less organized, like the market for ice cream in your town. Still buyers and sellers interacting.
For understanding the basics, though, we often start with a specific type, the competitive market. What makes a market competitive?
The key idea is lots of buyers and lots of sellers. So many, in fact, that no single one of them can really push the market price around much. Their individual impact is tiny.
Okay, and then there's the ideal version, perfect competition. That has a couple of specific conditions, doesn't it?
It does. Two main ones, usually. First, the goods being sold are all pretty much identical. Think like grade A wheat. One farmer's wheat is very similar to another's.
No real difference from the buyer's perspective. And the side...
It's a massive number of buyers and sellers. So many that no single farmer selling wheat or a single bakery buying it can influence that overall market price. They're just too small relative to the whole market.
Which means they have to do what?
They become price takers. They look at the market price and decide how much to produce or buy based on that price. They can't set their own. Try charging more. Buyers just go elsewhere.
Makes sense. So wheat is a pretty good real-world example that gets close to this perfect competition idea.
It's often used, yeah. Many farmers, millions of buyers. Now, the complete opposite would be a monopoly.
Just one seller.
Exactly. One seller, they set the price. Maybe your local water company or historically cable TV providers in some areas. They have market power because there aren't close alternatives.
Good contrast. But it's fair to say most markets in agri-food aren't perfectly competitive or pure monopolies, right? They're somewhere in between.
Absolutely. Most markets live in that middle ground. But perfect competition is a super useful starting point for analysis. It helps us understand the core forces.
Okay, great. Let's pivot then. We've talked about the market structure. Now let's look at the buyer's side demand.
Right. So the demand curve, what is it? It shows the relationship between the price of a good and the amount consumers are willing and able to buy at each price. Crucially, we assume other factors are held constant for that specific curve.
And this gives us the famous law of demand, which basically says,
all else being equal, when the price of something goes up, people demand less of it. Price goes down, they demand more. Simple inverse relationship.
Kind of intuitive, really. Ties back to opportunity cost. Again, higher price means giving up more of something else to get it.
Exactly. But, and this is key, that all else being equal part is important. Those other factors can change, and when they do, the entire demand curve shifts.
Okay, so it's not just the price of the good itself that matters for overall demand. What are these other factors that can cause a shift?
Well, income is a big one. For most goods, what we call normal goods, if people's incomes go up, they'll likely demand more of it.
Makes sense. What else?
Prices of related goods matter too. And here we think about substitutes and complements.
Right, substitutes, like butter and margarine. If the price of butter goes way up, people might buy more margarine instead.
Precisely. Demand for margarine would increase its curve shifts, right, because butter got expensive.
And complements are things used together, like printers and ink cartridges, or maybe hot dogs and buns.
Yeah, good examples. If the price of hot dogs falls, people might buy more hot dogs, and so they'll also likely buy more hot dog buns. The demand for buns increases.
Got it. What else shifts demand?
Tastes and preferences, definitely. Think about health trends. If everyone suddenly decides kale's the best thing ever, demand for kale shifts right.
Or if a food safety scare hits spinach, demand shifts left.
Exactly. Expectations about the future matter too. If you think the price of coffee beans is going to skyrocket next month because of a bad harvest,
You might buy extra now, increasing current demand.
you got it. And finally, pretty obviously, the number of buyers. If more people move into an area or if a product gains popularity with a new demographic, the total market demand goes up.
So, just to be really clear for everyone listening, especially our engineers who like precision, a change in the price of the good itself causes a movement along the existing demand curve. But a change in income, tastes, related goods prices, expectations, or number of buyers causes the entire curve to shift left or right.
That distinction is absolutely crucial. Get that wrong, and your analysis goes off track. Okay,
Yes.
so that's demand. Ready for the other side? Supply.
Let's do it. Supply. This is from the producer's perspective, right?
Yes. The supply curve shows the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity that producers are willing and able to sell at each price. Again, holding other factors constant.
And there's a law of supply, too, which generally goes the other way compared to demand.
That's right. The law of supply typically states that all else equal, as the price of a good rises, the quantity supplied of that good also rises. And if the price falls, quantity supplied falls.
Why is that?
Well, think about the producer's opportunity cost. A higher price makes producing and selling that specific good more profitable compared to using the resources, land, labor, capital for something else. So they're incentivized to supply more.
Okay, so we have buyers wanting lower prices generally and sellers wanting higher prices generally. How does this all resolve?
That's where equilibrium comes in. It's the point where these two forces balance out.
The sweet spot where supply meets demand.
Exactly. Equilibrium is where the market price reaches a level where the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. On a graph, it's simply where the supply and demand curves cross.
And that crossing point gives us two key values.
Yes, the equilibrium price, the price that balances supply and demand, and the equilibrium quantity, the amount bought and sold at that equilibrium price.
It's sometimes called the market clearing price, right? Because at that price, everyone who wants to buy finds a seller, and everyone who wants to sell finds a buyer.
That's a great way to put it. The market clears. No leftover unsold goods, no shoppers leaving empty-handed because things ran out at that price.
But what if the actual price in the market isn't at equilibrium? Say the price is too high, above equilibrium.
Good question. If the price is above equilibrium, then the quantity supplied will be greater than the quantity demanded. Producers want to sell more at that high price than consumers want to buy.
So you get a pileup of unsold goods.
You get a surplus or excess supply. Think farmers with too much produce, they can't sell at the current asking price.
What tends to happen then?
Well, sellers don't like holding onto inventory. They'll likely start lowering prices to encourage sales. As the price falls, quantity demanded increases, and quantity supplied might decrease, moving the market towards that equilibrium point.
Okay, and the flip side. What if the price is stuck below equilibrium?
Then quantity demanded exceeds quantity supplied. Consumers want to buy more than producers are offering at that low price.
So empty shelves. People wanting to buy but can't find it.
Exactly. A shortage or excess demand. Think of a sudden craze for a specific food item, and suppliers just can't keep up initially.
And how does the market react then?
With buyers competing for limited goods, sellers often realize they can raise prices. As the price rises, quantity demanded tends to fall, and quantity supplied tends to rise, again pushing the market back towards equilibrium.
So this tendency for the price to adjust automatically, whether there's a surplus or a shortage, to bring supply and demand back into balance. That's the core idea of the law of supply and demand.
That's it, precisely. It's the mechanism through which markets coordinate decisions of millions of buyers and sellers.
Okay, so understanding that equilibrium is key. But things rarely stay static, especially in agriculture. How do we analyze what happens when some event disrupts the market?
Right. We need a systematic way to think about changes. There's a simple three-step process usually.
Okay, what's step one?
First, figure out if the event shifts the supply curve, the demand curve, or maybe even both. Some events affect buyers' willingness to buy, others affect sellers' costs or ability to produce.
Step two.
Determine the direction of the shift. Does it increase supplier demand, shift right, or decrease it, shift left?
And step three.
Use a supply and demand diagram. Draw the initial equilibrium, draw the shift you identified in step 2, and then see where the new intersection point is. That tells you how the equilibrium price and quantity have changed.
Let's try an example relevant to agri-food. Say there's a really bad unexpected frost in Florida that damages a lot of the orange crop.
Okay, good one. So, step 1. Does this affect supplier demand for oranges? Or maybe orange juice?
Well, the frost damages the crop, so fewer oranges can be harvested. That sounds like a supply issue.
Agreed. It affects a producer's ability to supply oranges. Step 2. Which way does the supply curve shift?
With less crop available at any given price, the supply curve must shift to the left, right, representing a decrease in supply.
Exactly. Less supply. Now, step 3. What does our diagram tell us? The demand curve hasn't changed, but the supply curve shifted left. Where's the new equilibrium?
The new intersection point will be higher up and further to the left on the demand curve.
But we knew.
Meaning the equilibrium price for oranges, and likely orange juice too, will probably go up, and the equilibrium quantity bought and sold will go down.
Perfect analysis.
Perfect.
And notice, the demand curve itself didn't shift due to the frost. People still want oranges. But the quantity demanded decreased because the price went up. That's a movement along the demand curve caused by the supply shift.
Ah, that distinction again. Shift to supply, movement along demand. Crucial.
Absolutely.
So wrapping this up, we've seen how markets work, how demand reflects consumer choices, supply reflects producer choices, and how they interact to reach an equilibrium price and quantity. These really are the tools for understanding resource allocation.
Definitely. And for you, as future engineers in the agri-food sector, understanding these forces is critical. It helps make sense of price fluctuations, the impact of new tech, policy changes, consumer trends. It underlies so much.
It all circles back to that starting point of scarcity, doesn't it? Markets, driven by supply and demand, are essentially society's mechanism for deciding how to use those limited resources. What gets produced, how much, and who gets it, largely determined by price.
Prices act as signals. If beachfront land is scarce and highly desired, its price goes way up, signaling that it should go to uses or users who value it most highly, or at least can pay for it. Same principle applies to allocating farmland or skilled labor in the food industry.
So as a final thought for everyone listening, think about a specific part of the agri-food system you're interested in. Maybe it's organic vegetables, maybe it's biofuels, maybe it's vertical farming. How are the forces of supply and demand playing out there right now?
Yeah, and what future shifts do you anticipate? Changes in consumer tastes, new production technologies, climate change impacts. How might those shifts affect the equilibrium, price, and quantity in the years ahead? It's a dynamic picture.
Loads to think about. Thanks for walking us through these core concepts today.
My pleasure. They really are foundational.